Hey everybody, Omar here, and welcome to Knife of the Party. That's the name of my new channel. I was originally going to call myself Knife Sick, and I thought that sounded too stupid. And of course, Knife Shark, there's way too many Knife Shark people out there, so now you're going to know me as Knife of the Party. So let's go ahead and take a look at the knife that I have here in front of me. Now, this is a personal knife to me. I've been after this knife for 3 years, and actually there really was no way for me to even get this knife because he no longer makes it. The knife we're talking about is made by a very well-known now knife maker by the name of Clyde Challenor in South Africa. And I'm going to bring the knife out, and then I'll give you guys a good quick look at it. So this is the Clyde Challenor Raptor. This video is more on the work of what this man does than the actual knife here that you see in front of you, only because you guys will no longer be able to access or purchase this knife. It's now discontinued. He doesn't make it anymore. But I am going to bring out another knife that you can purchase from him, probably in the new year, because right now his books are closed. So let's just take a look at this knife, and I'm going to talk more about why I love this guy's work. Clyde Challenor. There's several people out there who talk about Clyde Challenor's work. The biggest person that talks about his work is Epic Snuggle Bunny. You guys are aware of him, and he's actually done a video on this knife. A lot more in detail than the video that I'm going to do. I'm just going to talk more about the knife maker himself and why I like him. So this is the Clyde Challenor Raptor. This knife is a huge sucker. Since we're already at the size, why don't I bring out some knives that I can show you as a size comparison, and then we'll do the specs on it. The first knife I'm going to bring out as a size comparison is the Benchmade Anthem. Now, as you guys know, the Benchmade Anthem is a full-size knife. So you can see that the Clyde Challenor Raptor towers over this knife. It will also tower over the Chris Reeve Nkosi. I mean, it is a huge, huge sucker. This is 3.5. This is 3.6. Okay. Let's put it up against the Sebenza 21 so you can see. I mean, everybody knows that the Sebenza 21 is a very famous knife. It's also a very small knife. So this comes in at right around, I think it's 2.78 inch blade on this one. How about a knife that most people are aware of, and probably a lot of you guys also own? How about the ZT0562? And, how about, well, this knife you can certainly buy. It's brand new. This is the Boost Blade Smoke 2, made by Best Tech. And as you can see, this knife, again, and the Smoke 2 is a fairly large, full-size knife also. But as you can see, no matter what knife I put up against the Clyde Challenor Raptor, it towers over it. Whatever knife I put in front of it, it just towers over it. So let me go ahead and do the specs on this one really, really quick so you guys can get an idea of the size, really. So this is a 4-inch blade knife. Cutting length is also 4 inches. The total length of the knife is 9.25. The blade height is 1.37 near the bolster. We've got 0.15 near the midpoint. We've got 0.15, and then towards the tip, it's 0.3. The knife weighs 6.6 ounces. It's a heavy sucker. We have an M390 stainless steel blade with a hand-rubbed satin finish on it, and a reverse Tonto style blade. so that you guys get a good look at that, man. This is probably one of the smoothest knives I have ever flipped. And I've held a lot of knives out there. I mean, this thing is ridiculous. Let's take a good look at the knife here. The milling on this knife. He only made about 50 of these knives. Okay, 50 of these. This one is very special because, as you can see, there's no maker's mark on it. It's a prototype. And the knife is actually, I think it's been sitting on Clyde Challenor's shelf since 2019. And I got into a conversation about him, and he told me he had one of these, one more left, and that he was going to sell it to me. I almost had a heart attack. So he sold the knife to me, and it's now mine, so I'm real happy about it. 2 ways you can open the knife. Obviously, the flipper tab on the top of that. You can do it either way. You can either go all the way over the top of it and swipe, which is one way to do it. But it's also comfortable enough that it could be a push button. If you grab in the right place, you just sort of grab the top of the flipper and then push down. The knife will pop right open. The knife has a medium detent on it. Yeah, it's not hard. It just is not a hard detent, which I kind of like. Medium is probably my favorite. Not a fan of the super soft detent, where you can shake the knife and the knife just pops open. That I'm not crazy about. The milling on the knife, no two are alike. So this is actually a one-of-a-kind. So all 50 of these knives were one-of-a-kind. Other things regarding this knife, the knife runs on ceramic ball bearings. Not all 50 of them did. Some were just made with regular steel ball bearings. Also, the screws on this knife are also unique. He did not put these cross screws on all of the knives. That's something that I guess he just did for some of them and not all of them. Excuse me. The construction of the knife is open construction. All you have is just the pivot, right? And one standoff, which I absolutely love. There's 2 types of construction that I love on a knife. One where the back spacer covers the entire knife completely, and where there's just one standoff. I'm also happy with, a bunch of standoffs in the middle. What I don't like is the half back spacer where it goes up to about here, and then over here there's nothing. That, to me, it doesn't seem symmetrical. So aesthetically, it's not as pleasing to me as something like this where it's total open construction. The smoothness of his knives are unique. Very, very unique. And I've held a lot of flippers as a knife collector, mostly from South Africa. But what makes Clyde Challenor's knives so unique is he combines CNC machine and hand-detailed work. Because South Africa is really well known for knives made completely by hand with no CNC machining. I consider Clyde Challenor to be a pioneer in CNC machining and in introducing it to South Africa as a prominent way to make knives, and the fact that you can meld 2 separate techniques, CNC machining and by hand detail, and that's exactly what Clyde Challenor does. The blade, for example, is done by hand. He does the hand rubbing on this. This is a hand rubbed satin finish blade. As you guys can see, I actually used it already. It's got sort of a small scratch on it. I could probably wipe that off there. I got a tree today, and I cut the rope off using this knife because it was in my pocket. But yeah, he combines CNC machining with made by hand detail, and he did that with the blade. The handles are done by CNC machining, right? And then the finishing touches he does by hand to get them exact. Which is why the smoothness on his knives is so uncanny and so just meticulously ridiculous smoothness. When I spoke with him, because I consider him a friend, when I spoke to Clyde, he said that the reason his knives are incredibly smooth is because he combines the technique of tolerances and flatness of the knives. When I mean flatness, I mean the inside flatness of the knife, leaving just enough room for the knife to have that smooth action that you're looking for. But Clyde Challenor's smoothness goes beyond that. Not only because it runs on ceramic ball bearings, which a lot of South African knife makers do. They put their knives on ceramic ball bearings rather than steel ball bearings. But Clyde Challenor really does it where, I can't explain this, but because he pays so much attention to the flatness and the tolerances, meaning the tightness of his knives, to get them to be as smooth as you're seeing here on camera, he's able to do that time and time again on all of his knives. But what makes his knives so unique as far as the smoothness is, on a lot of knives, and I'm talking about South African knives, let me just put the knife down for a second while I talk. A lot of South African knives, you are, when you open and close the knife, let me see if I can explain this. When you open and close the knife, so if I flip it, okay, right, and then I close the knife, this point here where the blade starts to close, you can actually feel the ball bearings rolling around. You can feel the vibration of the ball bearings on the, in your fingertips with the pivot when you open it on a lot of the knives. It's still smooth, of course, but that seems to be what's missing on Clyde's knives. I don't feel that vibration. I don't feel anything until the knife closes shut. So that's why his smoothness, I believe, is way up there. Way up there as far as perfection is concerned. I don't want to put a damper on other knife makers' smoothness because I don't want to. I think what those other knife makers do is just as excellent as what Clyde does. He's just going in a different direction by making his knives, spending maybe a little bit more time. I don't even want to say that, because that would mean that the other knife makers aren't doing that. But he's really just paying a lot of attention to detail on each and every one of his knives. And I really believe that all South African knife makers do that. But maybe that's Clyde Challenor's secret, is that he's doing it differently. And don't forget, he is combining CNC machining with detailed handwork as well. So that's how you get such an excellent piece. Yeah, so you've got the flipper tab as a way to open the knife. The other way is with the hole. That's another thing I wanted to mention. The hole was actually done differently on a lot of knives. Not on all of them, but some of them you had this teardrop shape. Some of them it was just like a regular circle, like the Spyderco hole. So he did change it up somewhat, even on that. But with this teardrop shape, I have to admit I had to figure it out, because it's not always that comfortable to flip it with the hole. Yeah, I had to kind of try and figure that out. So if I put my finger in the middle of it, I can flick it, but it's not comfortable to me. So I found out that if I put my finger towards the tip of that teardrop and then flip it, now it's comfortable. You have to kind of figure out what it is that if you're going to middle finger flick it, what's the best way to do it. And, that's all part about owning a knife, is getting comfortable with the knife when you're using it, flipping it, whatever, so on, so forth. I mean, you just want to get used to what you're doing. This knife is made all titanium handles. It's also got a nice titanium pocket clip. the top of the blade, it's got a good amount of jimping on that right there, followed by this nice sort of crowning on it. So if you need to push down on something when you're cutting, you'll be able to do that with ease. And then, of course, it comes down to a tip. So this is a reverse Tonto style blade. So you've got a lot of options to use it, obviously, because it's got a really sharp tip. You can use it for piercing. So that's really great. There's enough... well, I think there's barely enough belly on there, but you can still do it to do some drawing cuts. But really, the cutting power of this knife, no matter where you put the, it's almost like a Warncliffe style blade, because no matter where you put your, whatever it is that you're cutting, whether you put the item here, here, or here, you don't have to move or pivot your wrist to change the direction to get the amount of pressure to cut the way you want it to. So that's good. Yeah, smoothness is just ridiculous. I can't even explain it. The detail that he does on this knife, even just things like this little screw here. I mean, he polishes that shit. I mean, look at that. He actually polishes that screw all the way down. The pivot screws themselves, I don't know if you guys can see this, but if you look closely, not only does it have the cross in the middle, but even the screws, I think you can see it there, even the screws are milled. It's got these strikes going out of the pivot screw, where the cross isn't. Can you guys see that? You know what I mean? He's got like these strike lines to make it look like a star, and he does that intricately, even on the little tiny screw there. So that's unique. Obviously, the milling on this is done, CNC machine. Like I said, each one of these knives, no two are the same. They're all unique. And like I said, he only made 50 of these knives. So you do have to get used to the size. I have small hands, okay? So just the finger choil, I have to be conscious of it because my hands are small. I have this sort of tendency to put my hand sort of like, I guess, on this. My middle finger usually sits on this part of the knife, which is wrong. So I try and push my finger back so it's somewhere in this direction. So, leaving like between my index finger and the middle, but sometimes my middle finger will sit here, and that's what makes it so weird and so uncomfortable. But that's because the size of the knife is too big for my hand. So, but it doesn't mean that it's not comfortable ergonomically. I just have to find the comfort level for the ergonomics to work. Other details on the knife that he's done that a lot of people don't really notice. I'm going to bring out, see if I can show this to you on the camera. I don't know, maybe you can see it. The Detent Ball. Let me see if I can give you guys a better clarity on that. I should be able to. Okay, so here we go. The Detent Ball, I don't know if you can see it. It's in the back there. No, it's a little hard to see it. Even with the flashlight, it just glares at it, so I'm sorry about that. But one of the things that he does is that the Detent Ball actually sits on a stainless steel island to prevent it from popping out. So that's kind of a nice touch. Added in, obviously, a lock bar insert to prevent lock stick, which a lot of knife makers do. He's no exception. But just the little things this guy does, I mean, it's difficult to get the handles to be super flat if you were to do this by hand. I think it's almost nearly impossible. But Clyde Challenor does it with the CNC machining, and then he checks the handles for the flatness before he puts the knife together to check the smoothness. He wants the tolerances on both sides of the handle to be exactly the same, which brings us to the centering of the knife, which is always dead on. I mean, you can't find a more dead-centered knife than that. Clyde Challenor really does it up on all of his knives. Now I'm going to bring out a knife that in the new year you will be able to purchase. And that's another thing too. This was his old case, which is the case that the knife came in. This is how his cases used to look. You know, the green cross on it like it is there on the screws, and then the CCKK. Of course, you get the certificate of authenticity, and he gives you a sticker, which I thought was kind of cool. I think that's kind of cool. And then there's his certificate of authenticity with his name signed on it. And then, yeah, just the information card for his knife. So there you have that. That's kind of cool. The new case, and I'm going to bring out the new knife that you can buy. The new case looks like this now. So when you purchase a knife from Clyde Challenor, and I've done a video on this knife already, I just wanted to bring it out so I could show you a knife that you can purchase from him in the new year. I don't know when his book's going to open again, but if you're interested in getting one of these, I highly recommend it. I've already done a video on this knife. This is the Clyde Challenor Viper. The smoothness on this one is exactly the same. I don't know how, how he does it. I do love his jimping on both knives. They're not aggressive. And on the new knife here, he's got the jimping where it's very, very minute here, and then as it goes down, it becomes much larger. So that's kind of nice. Again, we got mill lines, and on this one, it's got inlays. This particular Clyde Challenor, I've talked about this on the video for the Viper that I did a few months back actually. You can check out that video. But I talked about how the inlay on this knife is literally one of a kind. In fact, this was the very first Viper that he ever made. The knife you're looking at was originally going to be how he was going to do the inlays on this knife, and then he realized that it was just way too time consuming to do this even for a quantity of say 20. So he changed the inlay style to a coffin shape, which he thought was a lot easier, and people are happy with that. In fact, I'm going to get another one, a plain one where, it's the coffin style. But, I'm also in discussion with Clyde to do a super one-of-a-kind again just for me, because, I consider him a friend, and we've gotten kind of friendly. He has inlays on both sides of the knife, unlike other knife makers who only put inlays on just one side, and it is difficult to do that on a frame lock. So as you guys can see, the details that this guy does on his knives, in making them perfect, it's worth the price to pay for a knife. I wish I could remember. I think I paid $11.50 for this one, with the inlays and with the Damascus steel on it. So these knives are very, very pricey. So if you're thinking about getting a custom, this guy is definitely a wonderful place to start, because he is a knife maker that is completely unique in his own way. He is on the same level as a lot of his contemporaries, but he does do things the way he likes to do them. He does work with a designer named Francois Nell, who is responsible for the design on both of these knives. So Francois Nell is the artist, and Clyde Challenor is the guy that brings the drawings of these knives made by Francois Nell to life. And so he gets most of the credit for the work that you see in front of you on these pieces, because both these knives are incredibly, ridiculously, meticulously well done. And even on this knife, again, this is sort of like a repeat of the Viper video that I did. But, I mean, check out the screws on this one. There's a quick story I wanted to talk to you about the screws on this knife. The Raptor, sorry. On the Raptor, these were his sort of screws for a really long time, the cross screws, right? What's interesting about the cross screws is that he made these for convenience for his customers. You do not need any special tools to open this knife. Just get a screwdriver and you can undo the knife and take it apart. I'm laughing because a lot of his customers took the screws with the screwdriver and started screwing them up. I mean, they didn't even look anything like they resemble here, like a cross. Some of them, just the cross got destroyed with like the wrong size screwdriver. So when Clyde Challenor came back in 2020, he decided to do screws like this, where it's all just flat. You know, there's no, you know, very, very smooth. He just made them completely flat. You can still take the knife apart using simple tools, but now it's only like a one regular screwdriver, or like Phillips head, or not Phillips head, I can't tell. Sorry, a star tool, excuse me. And you can get the star tool anywhere. You can get them in like Home Depot. You can get them any place. But yeah, he just wound up getting a lot of customers bringing their knives back, and he would have to service it. Excuse me again for shaking the camera. And then try and replace the screws. And he said, this is not worth it. So he came up with the flathead version of the screws that you see now. And this is how all of his screws are going to be. But it's still just as beautiful, because when you run your finger across the titanium, you can't even feel the screws. They're so flat, you can't feel them. And he showed me how he does that. Again, that's on the Viper video that I did. If you guys want to check that out, you can see it on the Viper video on my channel. Just search for Clyde Challenor Viper on YouTube, and you'll see that you'll see how he does that. So I bring out like a little video on my iPad so you can see. Yeah. So that is it for Clyde Challenor, the man and his work. If you are, again, any of you knife collectors out there are at a point where you bought way too many, you know, I guess CTs or way too many Spydercos, whatever it is that you might be into, and you're looking to step up your game into getting your first custom, a lot of us usually do it that way. We go with, say, production knives, like the Benchmade Anthem, where that's a really high quality piece. And then you wind up going into your first, I'm going to call it semi-custom, because, the Sebenza 21 really is really not a custom knife. It's really a production knife, but it's production knife on a different level. But this is just as close as you'll ever get to a custom before jumping into stuff like this. Yeah, definitely choose Clyde Challenor. He's definitely the way to go. You will have to wait a while because his attention to detail on the knives, he does not rush making his knives. He takes his time. He wants you to know that when you eventually do purchase a knife from him, that it's going to stay perfect forever. And that you'll have no problems with the knife at all. Yeah, like I said, Clyde Challenor just came back. He's been making knives roughly for about 8 years. And then I believe in 2019, he kind of disappeared. Maybe 2018, I'm not sure. He disappeared. He just stopped making knives for a while. And then the pandemic happened. But, really what happened was he was upgrading all of his CNC machines. And as far as I understand it, when I spoke with him, all of his CNC machines were in another shop with a a couple of employees. He was expecting a few of the knives to be already ready for his hand detail work, and they weren't, so he let those, as far as I understand it, he let those employees go. Then he took those new CNC machines to his shop, and then he realized he didn't know how to use any of those CNC machines, so he had to take like 6 months to like a year off to figure out how to use those machines. And now he's learned how to use them, and he's back and ready to go. At this point in time, he is only producing one knife, which is the Viper. But believe me, guys, if you're looking to get a South African knife, or you're looking to get your first custom, you are not going to be disappointed with this Viper. It is absolutely flawless, just as Clyde Challenor's work. So this is Omar signing off here at Knife of the Party. I will see you guys in the next video. I hope this video you found interesting. You know, again, this video was more about the man than the knife. Hopefully, when he makes more knives, I'll be able to do videos on the knives themselves. But like I said, you know, Clyde Challenor is in a transitional period. He's coming back, and he's back with a vengeance. And as far as I understand it, because he's got the new CNC machines, he's going to be doing things differently. You know, obviously the screws are just one thing that he's doing differently. But one thing about Clyde Challenor is that his work just keeps getting better and better no matter what the situation is. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much. And, you know, happy holidays. And maybe you'll find this guy under your tree. Tell your wife, tell your girlfriend that you want one of these for Christmas. I don't know if you can, but maybe there's guys out there already who've already hinted to their girlfriends and to their wives they wanted these earlier in the year. And, you know, they can get one. You don't have to just purchase one of these at, you know, at Clyde Challenor's website, which you obviously cannot at this point in time. But you can get one at the Blade Gallery. You know, check SouthAfricanKnives.com. Look around on the website. I'm sure there are some of his plain models that are out there for you to get until he picks up his production, because I know he's got some that are just about finished, and he's ready to let those go to his customers, and hopefully earlier in the year he'll be taking more orders. I'm on his books, so I'm real happy about that. I bug him every day. So again, Omar from Knife of the Party, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks so much for watching, and happy holidays.